Okay, we'll get started. So, good evening, everybody, again, and welcome to the Accelerating Green Ambition webinar series, the first in this series of events. My name is David Scanlon. I am one of the directors of Resolve Partners, and we are working with conjunction with Board Móna to deliver another iteration of the Accelerate Green program. For 2024. So this evening is about sharing some information with you all about what the program is for, who Accelerate Green can support, who's involved with it, and why it's important to Board Móna, and also a little bit of detail around the application process, some of the timings and some of the dates, just to really help you understand whether or not this program is a good way for you to support the growth of your business, and what sort of commitments and resources are going to be required from your side. So I suppose the schedule for this evening is I'm going to briefly talk through a number of slides to introduce you to the program, and then I'm going to hand over to my colleague from Resolve Partners, Angela Duffy, who will introduce the guests for this evening's webinar. So I will get started. So a little bit about Accelerate Green. Accelerate Green is the leading, and it was the first, and it is still the only scaling acceleration program dedicated to sustainability businesses in Ireland. We have been working with Board Móna, who developed and led the creation of Accelerate Green since 2021. And the first program ran from February 2022. So we have been working over the last 18 months or so, coming up on 2 years, to find companies who are interested in scaling their businesses, finding commercial pathways, grow their business internationally, and then potentially looking at significant fundraising, and all of it dedicated towards solving challenges and bringing solutions, innovative solutions, to market within the climate change, low carbon, green economy. It's something that has many names, but all of it is surrounded, or I guess focused into that area of looking at the biggest challenges facing us from a climate and biodiversity crises, and seeing if we can find Irish-based companies who can innovate to solve those challenges. As I said, we were the very first scaling accelerator in Ireland, and driven by Board Móna's involvement in this because of their involvement with climate, as we'll get into. So in terms of the kinds of companies that we're interested in having involved, and the kinds of participants who we're interested in having involved, this is absolutely an executive-focused accelerator program. So we're looking for people who are company leaders. So you are within the C-suite. So, you know, ideally, and looking back over the past participants, we've had companies represented by their founders or their existing chief executive officer, chief operating officer, sometimes chief technology officer. But, you know, we're very interested, I guess, in working with people who have an ability to reflect on the course of their business, reflect on their growth ambition, and be able to implement the changes that they may gain from the insights that we're going to be able to develop with them through the course of the program. So we're interested in, you know, delivering impact in those businesses as fast as we can. That's the nature of an accelerator. So we want to make sure that we've got people in the room who can make the decisions that are going to change the direction of that business as necessary. So that's in terms of the participants. And then in terms of the companies, as I said, we are interested in working with companies who are innovative at heart. There is some novel aspect, be it a technology, some interesting, you know, science-based intellectual property, or some engineering design approach, or something novel about another aspect of the business model that allows you to deliver a significant solution in climate, sustainability, biodiversity, and something that is measurable and reportable for your customers as well. So we are interested in companies who are going to be able to take an innovative approach that is within their, within their existing company, and bring that approach and that solution to customers across a global market. Okay, because the biodiversity and climate crisis is something that economies, communities, and nations across the globe are going to suffer. We are looking for companies who have that ambition and who also have that ability to scale into those markets. And in terms of the stage of development of the companies, there's kind of two broad communities of companies that we're interested in working with. And the first of those is SMEs, so established companies who haven't quite hit the sort of the scaling pathway yet in terms of getting to large company status, but SMEs who are already active in a climate sustainability sector, but who are interested in getting onto that scaling journey. And also SMEs who have an existing product solution in the market and who are listening to their customers, and customers are saying, okay, but we're very interested in how you can help us now with some of our sustainability or impact challenges. So these are SMEs who are listening to their customers, and they know that there is an opportunity or potentially multiple opportunities that they're able to pivot into, grow into, potentially even create a side business or a spin-out business that they would start working towards. And they're looking for support around identifying the opportunity and validating whether that's the right opportunity for them. So SMEs, as I said, are a cohort of companies that we are interested in bringing into the accelerator program, and we have had past experience of dealing with. And then on the other side, we are also interested in working with earlier stage companies who are at the sort of the threshold of the scale up phase. So, recently formed, but companies who are natively focused, from day one on solving climate sustainability, biodiversity challenges, but who possibly haven't, fully validated all aspects of the scaling model that they need. So you may have some product, you may have received some investment, you might have some early adopter customers, but you're definitely interested on developing that business further. And as I said, finding out the quickest way to get to that pathway for growth. So they're kind of the broad sort of communities, as I said, of companies that we're interested in working with on this program, and who this program is designed to benefit the most, and also the types of individuals that we're interested in working with on the program. So as I said, this program was devised and is backed and supported by Móna. Móna, as many people will be aware, are a long-established commercial semi-state organization who have been through an enormous brown to green transformation over the last number of years. Many people will have seen some of the advertising campaigns around More Than Móna, and it's illustrative of the company's transition away from peat extraction and thermal-based power generation towards becoming a climate solutions company who are active in an incredible range of different commercial activities. And Móna have an incredible ambition to grow commercially in the industries and the markets that they are active in at the moment. And these are primarily around renewable energy, power generation, and understanding opportunities around smart grid. They're also very interested in resource management and recovery, and this is going to be part of the focus of the talk this evening. Is around Móna's interest in that opportunity. And they're also very active as well in terms of land management and land use, and understanding how smart management of land can contribute to being a climate solution and carbon sequestration opportunity. And I guess underpinning all of that is Móna's own experience of going through that transformation and pivoting that 180 degrees towards the green and the low carbon economy. And they're interested in bringing a coalition of like-minded Irish-based sustainability companies with them to say, Móna were able to go through this transition. There is incredible, enterprise opportunity that you can go after, and being able to share that commercial experience with other SMEs and scale-up companies who are well aligned with the industries and the markets that Móna are looking to get active in. So that's Móna, and they're not just the designers of this program, the funders of this program. They're deeply embedded in the program as well. So participants on the program will be able to work alongside Móna throughout the program and gain from their commercial experience and their understanding of the challenges in the industry as well. And I can talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And then in terms of ourselves, so Resolve Partners, We are a leading innovation consultancy, an advisory firm. Our background is entrepreneurial. Our background is investment based. So we've been working with entrepreneurs and innovators throughout our career to ensure that they are on the right pathway to success, to bring their solution to the right customer and in the right market as well. We have experience from venture investing through to corporate R&D and designing, world-leading innovation programs as well. And collectively between the partners, we've been working in the startup space for, close to 30 years. And our portfolio of companies that we've been working with along the way have raised well in excess of 100 million euros in startup capital. And we have managed, corporate innovation and R&D programs in excess of 100 million euros as well. We're also absolutely focused on the area of sustainable innovation, investing for impact, and the areas of climate tech. We think that, these are the problems that are worth solving, and we're very committed to finding the right innovators who can apply their creativity and their intelligence and their insights into fixing problems in those spaces. So the opportunity for us to work alongside somebody like Brohan and Móna on a program like Accelerate Green, which we've designed and developed to match the needs of entrepreneurs in that space, was really wonderful for us. So we're very excited that we have an opportunity to do it again. So is it any good as a program? Well, we think so. We wouldn't be doing this unless we thought it was a good program. We wouldn't be doing this unless we thought that it was going to actually help the companies. And we're in a position now where we're able to look back over 3 cohorts of companies who have participated in the Accelerate Green program since we launched it back in October 2021. 25 companies have come through 3 programs with us during that time. And I think there's a couple of points here in terms of the value and the meaningful impact that the program has been able to deliver. So across those 3 cohorts of companies who have worked with us, we have seen multiple of those companies securing commercial pilots and trials directly with Brohan and Móna. So we'll talk a little bit about sort of like, how we select and who we select for, throughout this sort of webinar series as we get closer to the application date. But we don't necessarily directly solve for Brohan and Móna's problems. We're interested just in talking with companies who are generally aligned with the industries that they're working in. But at the same time, Brohan and Móna have seen commercial opportunities with some of the companies who have come through the program, and have been interested and open enough to be able to work with these early stage innovators to test and trial and validate some of those solutions in the market. So that's really encouraging in and of itself. But also having worked with those companies over the last year and a half, we've been keeping in track with them, or keeping in touch with them as they've graduated off the program, and we can see that their average revenue has grown to 150% of what it was when they began the program, and that we are creating these new green economy jobs. So 85 new full-time employment roles created since the program started across those 25 companies. And you can look at the quote there from Pádraig O'Toole, who was one of the founders of the AutumnSoft, which later rebranded as Greenstream, and a participant in the first Accelerate Green program with us back in 2022. And as was the highlights of his involvement with the program, really just focused around really understanding the business problem they thought they understood to an entirely new level. So getting to a point where they had really deep and meaningful insights into the customer's problem, and then being able to develop a unique selling proposition or a value proposition to allow them to achieve really impressive growth rates when they brought that solution to the newly identified markets that they wanted to target. So just an example there of the kind of impact the program can have on companies who are participating. So obviously everybody's asking the questions themselves, well, how do I sign up? How do I get myself into this program? So the next iteration of the Accelerate Green program will run between January and June of next year. It's not actually a 6-month program. The the Accelerate Green modules. There's 8 of them, and they're spread out throughout those across that time period, because we recognize that it's very intensive. We recognize that company leaders have an awful lot on their plates, and we want to make sure that you've got the resources and the time and space that you need to invest in this program to get the most out of it. So we do spread it out over that time period. We are currently seeking applications. So we are interested in talking to companies who are considering applying for the program or who would like to learn more. The closing date for applications is the 10th of November. And the application process is very, very straightforward. It's a very simple Google form. You can access it on Accelerate Green. And I would encourage you to apply early and often for the program, just to make sure you get our attention. What I would definitely, direct you towards looking at the Accelerate Green website, because we actually have profiles up there of the 3 previous cohorts, the 25 companies who've come through the program. And if anybody is interested in understanding more about those businesses and the impact that those companies gain from participating on the program, because I'll tell you wonderful things about the program because we built it and we deliver it, but to hear it directly from the entrepreneurs can sometimes be very helpful as well. So we're absolutely more than happy to direct you to have a conversation with any of those previous participants. So that's my lot, and I'm going to invite my colleague Angela to switch on her camera. Good evening, Angela. This is like the Eurovision. This is where I kind of say, good evening, Dunleer.
Good evening. Yes, I'm in the middle of the countryside here and it's wet. Thanks very much, David. I think that was very comprehensive to kind of give a background to why the programme exists, to Brohan and Móna's real creation of and thought process behind it, and our involvement in it. And I guess this webinar series, the idea for that is to knowledge share. What we do on programme is we bring in a lot of corporates, we bring in a lot of serial entrepreneurs, we bring in a lot of investors, we bring in agencies like Enterprise Ireland, SEI, IRDG, people who can help companies. So our role on programme is to surround you with people and knowledge. The network that you gain is intangible. It's not something that's written in a brochure, but the way that it's formulated is to enable you build those relationships. People do walk away with a new network, which they leverage for whatever purpose. One of the things I feel is, and David kind of alluded to it, and the seminar series reflects that there are a lot of opportunities out there. I was, probably about 2.5 years ago, conducting research in materials, actually, just on a particular project. And I realized that a lot of the large companies are really well ahead in their thinking and their efforts around sustainability, climate change, and meeting goals. So I think that there are opportunities for those scaling and SME companies to fulfill needs. So I think bringing people from the corporates to engage and speak on programme, but also in this webinar series, will allow people to gain knowledge of how it is and what's going on, what they've been doing, and maybe the challenges and the opportunities that are there, challenges they face, opportunities that may be for a scaling or an SME or a smaller organisation to fulfil. So very delighted to have both Ruth Kelly from Henkel, which is a global company, talk to me this evening, and then Anthony Brohan from Brohan and Móna. So I'll talk to them both, introduce them both as they come in. And, both of them in larger organisations, really both leaning very heavily, as David said, into the green, very conscious and very focused on this. And I just want to chat with them about what they do, what their needs might be. So I'll ask Ruth to maybe pop the camera on, and I can introduce her, because I think actually, if I'm not wrong, it's about this time last year that we met. We were at an IRDG conference and on a panel talking about sustainability. I've seen a huge difference from last year to this year, even in the public sector, the day-to-day for everyone, as well as large organisations. But you've been with Henkel for a number of years. I won't say it. Did David age me with the 30 years there? You see that? But I'm not going to say that to you. And you have, as a company, it's a family-run organization, as you pointed out to me. And so there are a lot of values that have, grown with the company. So maybe tell us a little bit more about Henkel, because it's not one that we have on the radar all that often. So maybe give us a bit of background.
I will, yeah. Thanks, Angela. So yeah, Henkel is a brand company. So very few people would know the name Henkel, certainly not in Ireland, maybe another country in Germany. So we're headquartered in Germany, so it would be quite well known there. But beyond that, but you would know our brands. So we're divided into sort of essentially two business units, adhesives on one side and what we call our consumer brands on the other side. So that's laundry, home care, hair care, those sort of products. On that sort of hair care products and things like that, I guess Schwarzkopf would be the big brand that people would know here, Punch, things like that. And then on the adhesive side where I am, I'm part of our consumer adhesives. So hopefully people know brands like Unibond, Loctite, Sellotape, Pritt. They would all be Henkel-owned brands. So yeah, we're a very large multinational, about 50,000 people employed globally. Not be hard pushed to find a country where we're not located. I think we're in most places. Here in Ireland, we have about 350 employees, and we have a very large research and development and innovation footprint. There's about 100 people in the R&D side of the business. So that's Henkel in a nutshell.
And your own role then, so on that sort of packaging and more innovation type projects. So it sounds, there's a lot of brands that we might recognize, but there's a lot of work in the background. And my chat with you a year ago was, all of this iteration that occurs. I'm come from a product management background, so there's constant iteration of product, but there's a lot more besides just new product or next generation for you guys.
There is indeed, yeah. I mean, it's particularly with the sustainability topic now, so much more comes in around legislation, around design for sustainability, design for recyclability. There's a lot of topics that are on the radar for us now that if you go back maybe 20 years, they weren't so much. But sustainability is an area where we have been involved for a long time, I would say. We're in our 32nd year, I think, of publishing our annual sustainability report. 30 years ago, it was called the environmental report, but essentially it covers the same topics. So that's 30 plus years where sustainability and our impact on the environment has been important enough to us that we felt we needed to publish an annual report on that, in addition to the normal reports that companies issue every year.
So financial is normal, but now
but we put this one on top, and as I said, 30 plus years ago. So it really has been something that has been a focus for us for a long, long time, long before there was a requirement, I guess, for that to be in focus.
And then, say on a day-to-day, so could you give us any examples? You're head of the packaging and head of special projects. What are special projects? I'm dying to ask that piece. So what are the type of things that this really comes down to in practice?
Yeah, so my role is within our consumer adhesive business. So consumer adhesives, we consider the ones, say, that you go into Woolies, B&Q, things like that. You see them on the shelves in there. So within that side of the business, I have a global role heading up our product development for packaging, and that covers innovative packaging, but also sustainable packaging, and really the two go hand in hand these days. So when you think about what the customer perceives, I guess, as sustainability, packaging is really central to that, because when they think about waste, when they buy a product, they buy the product to do the task, to solve the problem that they had, that they needed the adhesive for. But the packaging really, in their mind, is a waste stream. So we need to really focus a lot of sustainability efforts around that. And yeah, it's central really to what we need to do. The packaging aspect is.
What has changed? So I'm thinking of, my Loctite. I'm thinking now of going to any of the hardware stores and sealant or things that I can't recall. I'm not the DIY person. I'm the gardener. So what type of things have you seen a decrease in, the size, or is it a difference in the materials? How do you sort of iterate and improve the sustainability of packaging for some of these adhesives?
So the materials that we use is a big factor, obviously. So we look to include recycled resins, for instance, if where we have plastic components. A huge challenge for us, to be honest, because a lot of what we have are reactive chemistries and things like that. So switching out the materials of the packaging is not as straightforward as it might seem. Yeah. But if you look at our products, I guess the life cycle or the chain of our products end to end, when we look at the raw materials that go into the products inside the packaging, our production footprint, our own products that we sell then as a whole, but also the tasks and the products that our products go into. So adhesives obviously isn't the end goal. The adhesive will be used for something. So our ability to assist in a more sustainable solution for whatever it might be. And then end of life as well. End of life is a huge topic for us. So how does somebody then dispose of that packaging and in a safe and sustainable way? And then also for Henkel, it's the communities that we work in too. We have a couple of different focuses, I guess, for our sustainability. We have the climate piece. We have the partnerships with others to help them design for sustainability as well. And then the communities in which we operate as well. And overarching topic then of good transparency and clarity on what we're doing and how we communicate that.
You hear that more and more, that life cycle management, so that end to end. So it's all very well thinking about the piece that you do and then handing it over. So more and more, it's very interesting that you talk about it, because it was, something that everybody had to look at anyway. But if you strip back all the steps, there is a track and trace that is now required. So I know that legislation, it's just evolving. So it's just, every now and again we have a different one. We have targets and goals that have been set, but legislation continues to evolve. How does that impact you?
Legislation is one of our biggest challenges, I would say. It's such a fluid environment at the moment. So in Europe, there's drafts of new packaging waste regulations that are being worked on at the moment. There's still so many variables in there that are ill-defined or not yet defined, that it even means that in all good faith, trying to do the most sustainable actions that you can, you're not sure then in the end if the legislation will go against you. So it's a very I would say it's a very fluid environment we're working in right now, waiting on that legislation to be finalized. And then it will be extremely challenging, because even the draft, as you look at the draft now for the legislation, it has requirements around the amount of, say, recycled plastic, post-consumer recycled plastic, which can be very hard for a chemical industry to meet for reactive interactions between the products and the packaging. But even if we look at it, the requirements that the legislation is working towards, the minimum requirements of recycled resins into your packaging, on the European market, that amount isn't produced yet. So in order to be compliant, we also need the member state, companies need the member states to have better recycling or produce more recycling, so that we can implement them what we need to do on our end. So it's so interdependent. There's huge interdependencies in order for all of us to meet our requirements there.
This is part of the reason why I invited Anthony as well as yourself in, because we'll talk about that sort of taking away all of those different types of materials and fluidity also, and the challenges with that whole piece and end of life. I suppose with this effort that's been going on, you mentioned it's 30-something years that this mindset has been with Henkel. How does that, look? So what does that report, said? Has it changed? What are some of the metrics or measures or outcomes of that effort, I guess, over those years?
Yeah, so I guess it has changed and evolved with more information going in, rather than, I guess, than changing fundamentally. So if we look at what the report would have been 30 years ago, it would have talked about waste and about energy use and things like that. But now there's a lot more about carbon footprint calculations, about particularly our production facilities, and about our working towards carbon neutrality and even carbon positive production facilities. There's also, as I said, there's that community aspect to it as well, how we give back to the community and how we make sure that that we are working in a sustainable way in the for the environment, in how we interact with the communities where we work as well. So it's a lot more. I think it's a much broader topic these days than it would have been seen 30 years ago. It would have been seen very much as very defined metrics, I guess, whereas now sustainability just encompasses so much more than that. But certainly the circularity topic, I think if I look back on the report as it was written 30 years ago, I think I would be surprised if I saw as much focus on circularity and things like that clearly would be in the current reports.
Yeah, and that's interesting that, you look at the carbon footprint and, you have to meet certain production facility, carbon targets. I guess, how do you work with suppliers, vendors? You're a huge company. You're over 50k people. You're global. You're looking back the way, mapping and, planning what your next product is. How do you work with the vendors and the suppliers? And, you obviously have needs, goals to meet. Do you have conversations? How does this work back the way towards them, and how do they meet and help you with these goals?
Yeah, so having strategic supplier partnerships is really, really important. Both our suppliers into us and us also acting as a supplier to others as well. It really is important that everybody along the value chain works together. Because in the end, everything we do feeds into the next step, So we need to be all working towards the same goal and working together on that. So yeah, we would have strategic partnerships with our suppliers where we would actively look for more sustainable options, look for reducing the carbon footprint on the raw materials or the resins or the packaging components that we would take into Henkel. And then, as I said, on the flip side, as us being a supplier, we would work with our customers to help them design for sustainability as well.
This is cascade, so it's legislation and requirements. It's, you have also got people that you provide to. So the likes of aerospace and automotive in a large company setting, looking for sealants, adhesives that they can rely on, that they can track and trace. And then you passing that on. In terms of a strategic partnership, how do you, I suppose, identify those? There are people long-standing. I've come from medtech, so I know that, to change an ink on a piece of packaging is highly regulated. Probably similar regulations are somewhat for, consumer-facing goods. There is always a risk or analysis conducted there. But how do people become a strategic partner? Do you constantly look out and source those, or how does that work? Do you?
Yeah, so we would work very closely with obviously a company our size. We have a big purchasing organization and strategic innovation workshops with our suppliers, things like that. So we would, I guess, how we would identify our strategic suppliers, really, sometimes it's around volume that we buy from them, but not always. I mean, sometimes something that we buy in a very small quantity is actually could be really critical for us too. So we also look for, obviously, companies who would have a similar goal and purpose to our own company, that they will be aligned in their strategic targets and their drivers for sustainability as well. We would like to work with people in general. Yes, we would be working with people who are aligned with us in the same forward thinking way.
And then I suppose for this audience, if we're, looking at companies, there's a spread across the audience, I'm sure, but if they are, thinking about this potential program that they'd like to apply for, or they have questions, they obviously can follow up with ourselves. But, as businesses supplying in potentially to larger, what would you say to them? Any advice for them in terms of their approach, their messaging? What's the advice from a bigger company like yourselves?
Yeah, I guess from my experience from working in this arena, I'm about lots of years in Henkel related to. So 22 years in Henkel, but the last 2 or 3 really with a strong focus on sustainability from my side. I would say from that experience, I think it's really essential that that focus on legislation is so important. As I said, it's such a moving target at the moment for everybody. You really need somebody within your organization who can keep an eye on that, or have links to other organizations, or to consultants or the like, who can keep you really appraised with how those moving targets and that moving landscape of legislation will impact you, particularly if you're doing businesses across region. There, within EU, there is some attempt to bring it together. There's still some variability within the states, but there's some attempt to at least have common targets across the EU states. Once you go do business outside the EU, then as well, everybody, every region, every country, they all have their own legislation. So to keep an eye on exactly what you need to be doing, that's really important, because obviously being legislatively compliant is your minimum goalpost here, your minimum bar here that you're aiming at. But I would say then, when it comes to having other aims, when we look at setting your targets, I would say set realistic targets. Every company can't be the pioneer and the trailblazer and out in front, and that's okay. It's okay if your targets are to be a follower, or to match the market standard, or whatever that might be, but set them realistically for the resource leveling that you have and the market that you're aiming at. So really give good thought to what those targets are, and don't set them that they become so impossible for you to meet. To set them in a smart way.
Yeah, I suppose we, like thinking about working with people, the legislation piece is really strong. We do have a full climate module on this, and we have an expert that comes in to talk on that area. And it is an area that most people are not up to date with. And that's interesting that you should maybe, obviously inside with yourselves, your large company, you have maybe a team, but at least someone assigned, or someone who's responsible in a larger or in a smaller organization for that. So that's kind of interesting as well. So look, there's a lot of expertise and experience from yourself in this, and thanks very much for sharing Henkel's story. You did tell me before the rest of the audience came in how long Henkel is running. It's a birthday today.
It is. So today is Henkel's birthday. So we're 147 years in operation today. And it's funny, I was thinking about when we started our sustainability journey, and when I think back by reading the history, not by remembering, obviously 147 years ago, there are actions that I can see that the company took in those early days, not with a sustainability driver, but now we would say we're sustainable. So co-locating, say, our detergent and our adhesive plants, so that the product to package the detergent to glue the boxes closed was located right beside it. So shortening that supply chain and taking out transportation and things like that. So sustainable actions, even though that wasn't, nobody knew to put that name on it then. So yeah, 147 years of a journey for Henkel.
Yeah, and it's a good point, because there are a lot of companies that are working and are doing something that is sustainable, and it's just not labeled in that fashion, and it's just not maybe marketed, or the message is not projected that way. So we do work a lot with people on that, because, as you say, legislation cascades down, the needs, the language, it sits with yourselves in and around sustainability, and you're reporting on it now. And so you are looking and seeking solutions that meet your needs, and people need to create an awareness around what they do, or even to think about what they do in a different way. So thanks a million. That's great insight from yourself, and I really appreciate you joining us today. So
my pleasure. Thanks, Angela.
Great. And I'll invite Anthony to pop on his camera. We have talked a little bit on the creation of the product. We talked a little bit then on the creation of the packaging, and central to Ruth's role, and how there's an evolution over a number of years with Henkel, but probably more recently with other companies around this. But we still have a long ways to go, Anthony. So Anthony's head of operations for Brohan and Móna. And I guess I think David gave a good account of Brohan and Móna, and people online will know them as the company who, were in bogland areas and creation of the fuel. complete transition to renewables, energy and restoration of the boglands for carbon sink. So had that opportunity, and I think a lot of other companies can do the same. So that's the intention with what they're doing on the Accelerate Green program. But yourself then, back to the recycling. Where are we at? What tell us about a little bit about Bord na Móna recycling and your responsibilities there?
Yeah, in terms of recycling, a lot of people wouldn't have associated Bord na Móna with waste and recycling up until about 3 years ago, when the AES waste collection business that Bord na Móna acquired in 2007 was rebranded as Bord na Móna Recycling. And if we look at that business today, it's really an amalgamation of 20 different businesses over time, which is quite consistent with the rest of the waste industry. There's been a lot of consolidation in that industry over the years. Where we are at today, we're a business, we collect waste from 130 domestic households every year. We have about 5,500 commercial customers. We collect about 400,000 tons of waste ourselves every year. And in total, between our dry facility and what we collect ourselves, we manage about 750,000 tons. We have 188 collection vehicles on the road. We lift about 8 million bins every year, with 8 EPA licensed facilities, and we employ about just over 500 people. So it's a lot of moving parts. We have a lot going on in terms of the business.
And then, I mean, again, now that's collection of waste. That's changed, so, the, remember the Sesame Street character that had that bin where it was just an aluminium bin and he popped out. Now you have several bins, you have streams. It's
Right.
Slightly different. You're doing it from a residential and a commercial perspective in this fashion. So how has that changed in the last long while, and where is it going? We're still requiring a push in a different direction, I think.
Definitely does. Like, a lot of money and a lot of time and effort has been done over the years in terms of trying to encourage people to segregate their waste. Waste for us is a huge part of our business. We spend about 36 million a year this year, or will spend it this year, in terms of bulk haulage and gate fees for the waste that we collect. But when we look at that waste, like, we take, say, your general refuse, your black bag waste, and we look at that stream, we collect about 150,000 tons. The options for that waste stream are, well, it goes to landfill. Even though we own a landfill, we actually don't landfill black bag waste. We try and avoid that at all costs. It can go for incineration, for energy recovery. But if I look within that waste, we can see that between plastic bottles, between plastic films, rigid plastics, and metal, that accounts for about 20% of what's in our black bag waste all the time. And I suppose the challenge for us is, how do we get that out of, because that potentially, even if we only got half that out, it's still 15,000 tons of material. We could potentially move away from going from recovery and move it up towards recycling, because recovery market rates, and you've probably gauged I'm more a finance person in the background, but market rates for incineration are ranging from 125 up to 145, 150 euro per ton. But if we look at that material, and I can look at your PET bottles, your HDPE bottles, they'll command revenues of 100 euro per ton, 450 euro per ton. Aluminium cans, steel cans, like, they all command a revenue. There's a bit in the middle as to how you can extract that material from your waste. But it is a huge challenge for us, and I think legislation is driving that as well.
And we talked about this, Ruth, just prior to that, the aluminium cans, the metals have always been, recycled to a much higher degree because of their value. So, they make commercial sense in terms of doing that. But also now plastics. So there is a pull from the market to say, we really want our recycled plastic. Legislation will drive it, that, post-consumer recycled plastic has to be a 30% or an X% of the material that you use. That will creep up over time. But also, the plastics can be recycled and reused over and over again, and it is efficient. It is, better for the environment, but it's also better in general for your own business and everybody else is along that chain that Ruth was alluding to. So I suppose, you know, we have 20%, you're telling us, that's at the residential side. Commercial, how does the waste vary on that side? Where can there be steps or changes made in that respect?
On the commercial side, it's not overly different in terms of plastic content and metal content. The main difference between the commercial and the domestic waste that we collect is the organic fraction. So your fraction in terms of your food waste or general organics, which typically in domestic is about 15% of what's in the bin. Obviously commercial, that's not as big an issue. But again, when we look at processing of commercial and domestic waste, like we have a recycling facility in Tullamore where we take in recyclable material and we segregate that out into various different constituents. We will process that material together, domestic and commercial. In terms of general waste, then your black bag waste, be that for commercial, be that from domestic, that will get processed together.
Yeah, and you know, we had one of the companies on program last summer. Actually, there are solutions. He has a solution, you know, that's coming to separate things that we wouldn't expect, you know, where there's plastic and metal combined, let's say on a blister pack or something. So the fact that there's still organic in there at 15% and still, I'll call them raw plastics or plastics that could be really easily recycled, is really disappointing. So if I add them up, you're talking about 35% of the black bin absolutely could go to a different place and be useful in a very different way.
Most definitely, yeah. And I suppose one other thing to bear in mind is that we have part of our job is we have the lovely job of going through this waste, but we see that within the black bin, 19% is paper and cardboard.
Okay.
So it's albeit whereby we can target plastics and we can target metals and we can target organics. Paper and cardboard, once it goes into the black bin, you're not going to get a reuse or recyclable value out of it.
That's fair enough. So obviously if they're mixed with organic, it's very, very difficult to retrieve something like that. Your plastics, I've been in the plant, can be retrieved to some degree, but it's still arduous process and could be simplified. So when you add that up, 19% and 15% and 20%, that's pretty poor on our behalf. There's a bit of a move, and it was talked about last week from government and in Ireland, a change to spread the amount of organic bins, so everybody to have a brown bin basically, or what's the change? What does that do? Is that a challenge for you guys? What impact does that have for you guys?
Yeah, a lot of change happening at the moment for all the right reasons. All of this change has been driven by the 2018 EU Waste Framework Directive, where it sets out recycling targets for countries to achieve from household waste. So by 2025, the recycling target for Ireland is 55%, and by 2030, it's 60%. But as we said here today, in September 23, we're in the mid-40s. So there's quite a body of work to do in terms of achieving the recycling targets that we need to achieve. There's a lot of legislation. I don't think in my time in recycling, I've never seen so much legislation coming through in such a short period of time. So the key legislation that's coming through is the circular economy or the waste recovery legislation, where that's an additional €10 per tonne on all waste that goes for incineration or co-incineration or even export as a refuse-derived fuel. But that's a big change within our business. It would hit us for well over 2 million a year in additional costs. But it is designed to encourage people to use recycling more so than recovery. And then in terms of food waste, the regulations at the moment require waste companies to roll out brown bins to all population areas over 500 people. By the end of this year, waste companies will be required to roll out brown bins to all population areas, regardless of area size. So with those pieces of key legislation coming at us when the waste recovery levy ends in September, and we also have a deposit return scheme coming on board in February, whereby consumers will pay a deposit when they buy, say, bottles of beverages, minerals, etc. And consumers can bring the bottles or cans back to vending machines and get their money back. Is the overall concept is something that, yes, 100%, and we can understand that. However, the challenge then for us back in Tullamore is that we've suddenly taken a lot of material that was in our recycling bin potentially is not in there anymore.
Yeah.
We still have the same plant, we still have the same costs, and we don't have the same value of the material we take out. So a lot of challenges, a lot of moving parts. But
how do you adjust for that? So that's interesting, whereby, you know, you must do something, it's regulation, it's the right thing to do as well. How do you evolve the business? And there are challenges with that. You want to tell us a little bit about what they might be in terms of, you're right, how do we process, you know, from those vending machines? Is that someone else that, you know, supplies in those vending machines? I'm sure you're not producing them yourselves. So how does that even relationship work?
Yeah, there's a tender contract run by DRS Ireland, and there have been successful vendors who are doing collections and reprocessing of plastic and metals and so on collected. The DRS schemes in some countries have had quite a bit of success, and in some countries they haven't been successful. So it's very much it's a wait and see how it follows through here in Ireland, but we'll have a clear idea in the middle of next year.
I can't help thinking there's still an onus, and no matter what you guys do and what you implement and what changes you make, there's an onus on all of us to pay attention and to, you know, have behavioural and habit changes, which is a very difficult thing to do.
100%, because we see especially in our black bag waste, we see a lot of the material in there potentially, if it had been segregated, it has recyclable value. And there's a lot of moving parts here as well, because like we look at the waste material in the black bag and say, right, we take out the organics. That's not a big task to do. We can move that out. Then we look at the waste that's left over. If we leave the plastic in, that waste now has a fairly high calorific value. So that goes for that material as without further processing will go for incineration. Incinerators are limited not just on the tonnage they can accept, but are limited in how hot they can burn. So when you're looking at these waste streams, we always try to say, right, let's solve one problem, but don't create another problem.
That's true. So you're, you know, it's like it has to go somewhere. So there has to be a solution. You can increase, I suppose, the amount of, I would say, recyclable material that's coming out. That takes away from incineration, takes away from landfill. And then it also adds into a new stream, or it's added in or back into the stream, whereby it's recycled. And that's useful for not just ourselves, but the climate and all of those large companies who need that as well. Will there be adjustments in terms of, you mentioned, you know, different types of facilities that Brohan and Móna have, the Tullamore one, there's a number of others, each of them with a different function. Will there be changes as legislation rolls in, as changes in requirements, maybe hopefully changes in people's habits? What challenges do you face then in changing the way that you do things, or the plants work, etc.?
Challenges we face, if I take our existing plants first, we process in Tullamore, we process recyclable waste, and then in Lusk and Navan, we process skip waste. So we're looking at what we extract, and we're always looking at in terms of how can we, like there will always be a portion of material, say on Tullamore and on Murph, where we take in recyclable waste. 37% of what's in the recycling bin is not really recyclable. So we're targeting what we do extract. How can we improve the quality? Can we further divide up, or can we further segregate the output and increase value for ourselves? I'll give you an example. In Lusk, we take in skip waste, and we know that 9% of the skip waste that we take in is wood waste. But as that goes through the processing, goes through our line, we know that we lose 4%. But like 4% might sound like a small figure, but that 4% is worth $250,000 a year to us. So what I'd like to say, what we find working in our plants and throughout our different processing technologies, it's the 1% or the 2%. It's the niche operator that can come in and look at something differently and give us that 1 or 2%. But potentially for us, it's worth a lot of value and makes us more competitive and helps us deal with some of these impending regulations, because I think
or bad behavior, if you like, as well. It sounds like there's a lot of potential there. I think there's potential in waste. It's kind of interesting, you know, and we did visit your site. We visited some other sites as well. And I've been kind of tuning into this. It sounds odd, but as part of the sustainability education for myself, it is a big, along with energy, which you also play a huge part in and will play a large part in for Ireland. So you're really, you know, as Brohan Móna, pivotal in what we do in these two very, very important categories in sustainability. I love the example of the vending machine, and then in working with other vendors. So sometimes you're kind of taking it in, or you're working with somebody else as a supplier, and then also feeding it out to others. How do you build those relationships on either side of that? So maybe recycled or recyclable plastic goes out, or you have the vending machines. How do you yourselves find the vendors? What's your procurement process?
Yeah, in terms of the output from our plants, like we look at, say, in Tullamore, we have our recyclers, and we have a number of different. We export the majority of our material goes for further processing. Really, what we're doing is segregating. But for us, the onus in what we do is to have the best quality material that we can, so that we can command prices. So we look at the best prices we can get. So we're looking at contamination levels and consistency, and we're looking at what we extract, or can we further, like if we look at HDP bottles or PET bottles out of Tullamore, can we split those in any different way to increase value? And in terms of, so we're constantly we're trading those, but it's all like our trading capabilities are based on the quality of material that we produce.
Yeah, and that's something I've come across with other facilities as well, that the idea is to take in whatever to take out and extract and separate and clean it, and then it is exported. It is exported to processors, you know, in the UK and across in Europe. All of the different facilities in Ireland do that. So it is trying to, and it's, you know, you should shout out here. We're finishing up now, but you should shout out to all of us here listening that we need to make a best effort, so that we can get the most out of that, but also that we do something that's better for the environment, avoiding the incineration and maybe landfill paths.
I think, the key thing is we have the waste, and we can see the value that's within the waste. We just need ways of getting that out, and where we are getting it out, we need help in terms of getting that extra 1 or 2%. And for us, doing the right thing, doing what our customers expect us to do, and the economics of doing so, they're not competing forces. They're very, as we see them, very, very much complementary.
Anthony, thank you. I'm very intrigued by it. So I'm really appreciating your time and Ruth's time today for the chat. David's going to finish and close us out. And thanks to everybody for joining.